Hi, my name is Mafe Rajul. I am a King County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney, and I'm here to talk about murder. We as a society are fascinated with murder. We love Law and Order, we watch true murder stories on the Discovery Channel, and we read books about murder. I'm not here to talk about why we're fascinated with the worst possible crime in the world. I'm here to talk about a true murder that happened in a different country, the murder capital of the world, Honduras. Now, when we watch those shows, when we read those books, there's lots of evidence, and that is because we value our freedom. In our criminal justice system, we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that somebody actually committed the murder. So let's talk about murder in Honduras. Carlos, a gay male, owned a little sporting goods store at the city's multi-sport complex. On a Saturday, his friend Pedro called him to see if he would want to have dinner. Carlos declined because he had a date. He was seeing a young male that night. Didn't give any other specifics. He's a very private person. The next day, on Sunday, Pedro called Carlos to find out how the date went. Pedro couldn't get a hold of Carlos. And given that Honduras, being the capital murder of the world, in the city of Tegucigalpa, the capital, they average 10 to 12 murders a day, Pedro got concerned. So he called the police. The police responded, and they found that there was no forced entry into the residence, but they found Carlos laying in a pool of blood in his living room. The police started to conduct investigation. They realized that he had been strangled and he had 6 stab wounds to his neck. They collected evidence. They collected 2 bloody knives, and they collected a wine glass that had a fingerprint that belonged to a man named Juan. This is how evidence is kept in Honduras. And when the police run out of space in their office, then the evidence gets stored at the prosecutor's office, in the courthouse. And sometimes, when the evidence is a key piece of evidence, like a motorcycle, like this one, which is a motorcycle a prosecutor was riding when he was murdered, they keep it in the hallway at the courthouse. The officers went to the multi-sport complex place, and they spoke with 2 witnesses. Now, I am not trying to protect the identity of anybody. I'm going to be referring to these witnesses as Witness A and Witness B. And that is because in Honduras, the vast majority of the prosecutions rely on protected witnesses. Witnesses whose identity is unknown. That means that the person that will give a statement to the police and that will testify against the defendant, we will never know who that person is. The defendant will never know who's testifying against him, ever. The police spoke with protected witness A. He indicated that he was going for a swim when he noticed that Carlos's store was open, but Carlos wasn't there. However, he saw Juan in there. He didn't think much about it because he had in fact seen Juan in the store before. And then the police spoke with protected witness B. Protected witness B was running, and she overheard Juan tell 3 or 4 different males that he had murdered Carlos the night before. She was surprised, and as she kept running, she turned around and looked, and she saw Juan carrying a bag. And in the bag, he was grabbing and pulling out of the bag bloody clothes and bloody shoes. With this information, the police obtained a video from the complex. Now, the problem with this video is that it wasn't time-stamped. However, the police were confident that this was a video that was taken from surveillance on that Sunday. The video confirmed that Juan was in the vicinity. However, Juan is never seen with a bag, and Juan is never seen speaking with 3 or 4 males. That is the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Trial is about to start. Juan maintains his innocence, but yet the prosecutor charged him with murder, with intentionally killing Carlos based on a single fingerprint and this confession that somebody heard at the complex. It's the first day of trial, and in Honduras, they don't have a jury system. So they don't have 12 people from the community deciding the fate of this man. Instead, they have 3 judges, and they don't have a unanimous verdict requirement either. You just need a majority verdict. So 2 out of the 3 judges need to agree whether he committed the crime or did not commit the crime. It's about 10 o'clock, so we're now an hour late. And one of the judges is in the courtroom trying to figure out if people are ready. And the prosecutor, a very beautiful young woman with a very short skirt, very tight shirt, and showing a lot of cleavage, approaches the judge. The judge gives her a big hug and a kiss. Now, we Latin people are known for our warmth and our affection. But me, a Colombian, can tell you that warmth and affection is not proper in a court of law. The other 2 judges come out. They're sitting on the bench, and the trial is about to start. The prosecutor summarizes the evidence to the judge and reads the code indicating to the defendant what he's charged with: murder. The judges then ask Juan if there's anything he would like to say. This is his one chance to talk. The police is not allowed to speak with suspects, ever. And if they ever say anything, nothing they say can be used against him. Juan declines to give a statement. So trial starts. First witness, Pedro, takes the stand. The presiding judge asks Pedro, "What's your name? Do you know Carlos? Do you know Juan? Why are you here?" Pedro answers the questions. All he knows is that Carlos had a date and that the next day he was murdered. And then protected witness A takes the stand. Remember, we don't know his identity. So he comes into the courtroom covered in a parka from head to toe. He's rolled into the courtroom in a box. I like to describe it a magic box with a little window, a tinted window, so he can see through the window into the courtroom. And the judge warns him to not give any identifying information because that could clue the defendant as to who this witness is. Same questions. Do you know Juan? Do you know Carlos? What do you know about this case? The witness then starts to answer the questions through a microphone that distorts his voice so that the defendant cannot identify the voice either. After he gives his testimony, the prosecutor asks that the box be rotated towards the defense table so that the witness can identify the defendant. The defense attorney objects and says, "Your Honor, there's only one person sitting at counsel table, and that's my client." The prosecutor is appalled and says, "Your Honor, the defense attorney is giving tips to the witness to identify his client." The judge simply says, "Rotate the box to see if we can have an ID." Sure enough, the box is rotated, and protected witness A identifies the defendant as the man that was that Sunday morning, the day after the murder, in Carlos's business. Then we have protected witness B, and the exact same thing happens. It's now noon. It's time for lunch. Now, I have been told that Spanish-speaking people speak really fast. And I'm here to tell you that I confirmed that in Honduras. A murder trial, 3 witnesses, 2 that identified the defendant, all testified in less than 2 hours. That's pretty fast. We come back from lunch, and it's time for the experts. First expert, DNA expert. She comes with her report, and she reads verbatim from the report. There's some great evidence there. The victim's DNA was in the bloody knives. The victim's DNA was in the bloody clothes. Wow, that's a great breakthrough. Now we have the fingerprint expert who testifies that Juan's fingerprint was recovered from that glass. No question. And then we have the phone expert. The phone expert is going to testify as to the location of the defendant and the victim throughout the day, and whether or not they knew each other from the phone records. Here's the breakthrough. The victim was at her house when he was murdered. The victim was at his house when he was murdered. We don't know where the defendant was. And they knew each other because Juan was a contact in Carlos's phone. Now the prosecutor wants to call the medical examiner and the police officers, but they no longer work for the police department. They cannot be located anywhere. Since the witnesses could not be present to testify, their reports are admitted into evidence. No cross-examination, no questions asked. That's the evidence. And that concluded the state's case, beyond a reasonable doubt. It's now 4 o'clock, and everybody goes home. The next morning, the prosecutor gets up and provides a closing argument and asks the judge to convict Juan for the murder of Carlos. The judge asks Juan again if there's anything he wants to say. He says no. The judges then ask the victim's family to address the court. The victim's family tell the court that all that they want is for justice to be done. And all they want is for the man, Juan, who killed their beloved Carlos, to go to prison. 45 minutes later, there's a verdict. A unanimous verdict. Guilty as charged of the crime of murder. This is what the presiding judge said. We find that the state proved that Juan went to Carlos's house, strangled him, stabbed him, left a fingerprint in a glass, and the next day confessed to the murder. Our system is not perfect. It is run by people, and we make mistakes. But we have a high standard, beyond a reasonable doubt, because it is better to have a guilty person go free than an innocent person behind bars. I grew up in Colombia. I had the amazing opportunity to work in Honduras. I lived in Europe, and I'm here to tell you that we live in one of the best systems in the world. Thank you.